The British capital bears few scars of the damage caused by Nazi bombers 85 years ago. In September 1940, German Chancellor Adolf Hitler hoped to break the country's morale and cripple its war effort through a months-long campaign of aerial bombardment. The Nazis never managed to invade mainland Britain, but for 8 months the German Air Force plagued the skies above, especially over London. Jeff Borsak was there.
My parents were killed in the blitz in November 1940 when I was 3 years of age. And the reason I survived, that a few hours before I was taken to hospital with the measles. And I always remember, even at 3, them saying, "We'll see you in the morning." But of course for them the morning never happened. You went to school and that night you had a meagre supper and you automatically were taken to the shelters to sleep. And you slept there overnight, and in the morning when the all clear sounded, you got up, you were lucky you had some breakfast, and then you went off to school past still burning houses. On one occasion I went to school and there was just a big hole in the ground. And that was it, day in and day out.
During the most relentless 57-day period of bombing, over 1,000 firefighters were killed trying to protect Britain's cities and their residents. Thousands more emergency service workers were killed throughout the Blitz, as well as tens of thousands of civilians.
But not all deaths were caused directly by bombing. One of the many horrors of the Blitz was the Bethnal Green tube station tragedy, when, upon hearing the warning siren, hundreds of people fled down the steps into the shelter. This memorial commemorates 173 of them who were crushed to death.
From the ceiling to the bottom was full up with people, all the bodies. They said there was 8 or 9 deep. Now, people laying on top of each other, they're all suffocated. That's what killed them. Had we been 5 seconds, 10 seconds later, we wouldn't have come out there.
Ray and his siblings had entered first and narrowly avoided the crush behind them, but they spent the night unaware of what had happened to their parents and grandparents.
When we got home in the morning, it was very cold. It had been really cold that night, and my brother lit a fire at the fire, just sitting around the fire waiting, thinking they might come home. Eventually, I say that they found the bodies and that.
His father, grandfather and grandmother had all been killed, classmates too. After days of worry, his sister found their mother, bruised but alive, in hospital. She lived into her 90s, but never got over the trauma of that night. While London experienced a prolonged campaign of Nazi bombing over months, it was the city of Coventry whose name became synonymous with the pain the Germans could inflict. On the 14th of November 1940, 500 German bombers left occupied France for England. Aided by the light of a full moon, they easily identified Coventry, releasing 36,000 incendiary bombs and 500 tons of high explosive.
11 hours later and the air attack was over, but the city continued to burn in a firestorm of wind and flame. Over 2,000 homes were destroyed, over 41,000 homes damaged, 2/3 of the city centre burnt to a crisp.
The intensity of the raid was absolutely unique, and indeed the Germans coined a word, to Coventriate, or Coventrieren, which meant to utterly destroy. Quite quickly, Coventry became a symbol for the horrors of war that could engulf any civilian target.
German pilots later reported being able to smell the burning city and feel its heat from their cockpits. In one night alone, they killed 500 people and injured 1,000 others. Yet, on Christmas Day, just 6 weeks later, the current dean's predecessor would offer a surprising message to the distraught congregation of the destroyed city.
He says, early this morning we celebrated communion with as much joy in our hearts, I have to say, as on any Christmas day. And then goes on to say, hard as it may be, we are seeking to banish all thoughts of revenge from our hearts and to seek to build a kinder, a gentler, a more Christ-childlike sort of world.
At London's Imperial War Museum, historians attempt to bring the reality of war to an audience almost entirely unfamiliar with its nature. They explain what life was like during World War II, but also show its consequences.
The remaining houses that survived the bombing were no longer fit for purpose. So there were large clearances of these areas. A lot of old houses were bulldozed, and instead multiple occupation buildings were created instead. A lot of the original families in the East End moved out or were moved into other areas, and that changed the whole community.
The physical and social impact of those 5 years of war are still remembered in the UK through the buildings that replaced bombed homes, through Britain's conception of the welfare state, and through memorials to the soldiers and civilians who gave their lives to try to protect Britain's cities. Stuart Smith, CGTN, East London.